Welcome to Hotter Than Ever, where we uncover the unconscious rules we've been following, we break those rules, and we find a new path to being freer, happier, sexier, and more satisfied in the second half of our lives. I'm your host, Erin Keating. Welcome to everyone listening today. If you are new to the podcast, thank you so much for coming and giving us a try, giving us a listen. If you are a loyal and regular listener, thanks for bearing with us and our schedule changes now that we're on an every other week release schedule. I hope you will still go back and listen to episodes you might have missed back in the archive. And also you can go on YouTube and look for our episodes that are dropping there every week. We are going to get the whole back catalog up on YouTube. I don't know if you've heard the trend. Video is the trend for podcasts. Television is the trend for radio. What is happening in the world? Everything old is new again. I'm so excited to share this conversation with you. I really enjoyed talking to my guest today. Her name is Carin Luna-Ostaseski, and she is the founder of a company called Hot or Just Me. It's a resource and community for women going through perimenopause and menopause. I don't know if that's you, but I suspect, since you're listening to a podcast called Hotter Than Ever, that might be you, that you might be the target demographic. I think she is right on target for our audience. And her company, Hot or Just Me, provides information, curated wellness solutions, and tailored products that address key symptoms like hot flashes, night sweats, irregular periods, mood swings, and all the sexy things we are going to get into in this conversation. Carin is super impressive. She's a serial entrepreneur who started her career as a creative director at major media companies and tech startups. And she was the first American woman and Hispanic person to create a Scotch whiskey before entering the midlife space. I love this conversation because it blows my mind that we grew up and we never knew that there was going to be this potentially 10-year period called perimenopause, which needs a rebrand, and we work on that in the episode. We never learned that there was a 10-year period where you transition from having your period to not having it, and that all these symptoms come along with it. And then you go into menopause, which that was also never spoken about. I'm so grateful to this generation of women and leaders and entrepreneurs like Carin who are taking on this space and creating solutions for us, and also opening a more public conversation about normal things that are happening to our bodies. It's just a normal hormonal change. Ladies, how come it's taken so long? Obviously, I had menopause on the brain when I named this show Hotter Than Ever. And I heard about Carin and that her company name was Hot or Just Me. I was like, well, obviously we need to talk. And also a little bonus, you're going to hear about all the awesome stuff that she sells on her site at hotorjustme.com. And just for you, if you go to that site, there's a link in the show notes. Use the code HOTTER and you can get a 10% discount off of everything she sells there. All right, let's get hot. Never was this transition more apt. Carin, welcome to Hotter Than Ever.
Oh, thank you so much, Erin. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
You could not be a better guest for this show, given the name of your company and the name of our podcast.
We're just a perfect fit.
I know, we really are. It's a match made in menopause, perimenopausal heaven, if there is such a place. And I would just love to, your journey's so interesting, and I would love to hear what took you from the world of corporate life to the liquor, the spirits industry. And then I imagine it was probably a personal thing that happened to you that brought you into the perimenopause and menopause space.
Bingo. Yeah. So I'm calling this my third act in life. My first being what I set out to do out of college as a graphic designer and creative director. I worked for major media companies and Silicon Valley startups, and I quickly became disenchanted with what I was doing.
Oh, I don't know
Staring,
why. Supposed
staring
to-
at, I know, right? Staring at computer screens all day long, designing things with the intention to keep people on their devices longer. And it just became soul sucking. I just didn't want to do it anymore, but it was so much of my identity, my career, my salary, like everything
I
was
relate.
just, yeah, right. And so it took a big leap of courage to say, I want to quit and follow my dream. And at that time, what I was craving was connecting people in real life. And I was finding that over a glass of whiskey with many people, having that moment in real time where you can sit and have a moment face to face and just share and go deep, right? So I realized I wanted to start a brand and I didn't know how to do that. So I wrote to 80 people, got rejected 80 times, and finally found that 81st yes that helped guide me to create Sia. So that turned into a big success. I was the first woman, as you said, in history to create a brand of Scotch whiskey. It was very well received to the point where it was acquired by the largest spirits company in the world a few years ago. So I found myself with,
That's
thank you.
exciting. That's what
Thanks.
every entrepreneur hopes for, right?
It was. And it was also this double-edged sword, right? Watching your kid go off to college and you have no control over what's happening. So
Right.
just sitting on my hands is not something that I'm used to doing. And so around my early 40s, I started getting these hot flashes and these night sweats and anxiety and brain fog and all of these like weird things started happening to me and feeling my way around in the dark, talking to, I call it girlfriend medicine. Is this happening to you too? And my doctor wasn't much help and eventually had to push back to find the right one. And then realized that there was a need for women that were going through so many of these perimenopausal and menopausal symptoms for products and services and just really where to start in terms of navigating all of these. So that's how Hot or Just Me was born. I named it after the question I ask pretty much everyone around me. Is it hot or is it just me?
It was just you. Yeah. Yeah. Well, my question for you was, did you know right away that it was perimenopause? Did you like put two and two together, or were you like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah, I didn't. And it started out with these heavy periods, right? Like my periods became monsoons. This like the same amount of discharge or blood, but like the shortest days, like 2 or 3 days. And so it's just freaking out, like what's happening to my body. Talked to my doctor and he wasn't very helpful. And then the waking up in the middle of the night was the next one, just insomnia, anxiety around like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. And again, it took me having to advocate for my own health and find the right doctor. It came as a big shock to me and something that you've talked about on your podcast, that doctors don't get a lot of training when it comes to menopause. In fact, only 3 hours of their residency is covered.
That's right.
And so, yeah, unless you have a doctor who, is maybe a woman who has gone through menopause and hasn't retired yet from her OBGYN delivering babies practice, or a man who has a partner that maybe has gone through it. It's just some kind of a personal interest. It seems like it's really hard to find the right practitioner. So I always encourage people to go to menopause.org, and there's a directory there of a couple thousand doctors that have gone through extra certification. But
That's a fantastic resource, and we'll put that in the show notes because I haven't heard about that, and I feel like, yeah, I mean, the lack of education around women's bodies, women's health, women's reproductive health, like the cycles of our hormones, like only recently has that one big study been debunked about hormone replacement therapy.
Yeah.
So was that not a thing that you went to HRT?
Yeah, so I've had an interesting journey with hormones. As a young adult, when I was on birth control, I found that it would just make me hysterical, like crying and just like really like sad. And then I just didn't take them. I tried a few different brands in my 19, 20 years old and just didn't continue. And then around my 30s, when I wanted to get pregnant, I couldn't. And so I did IVF, and that was just a journey with hormones, right? Like all the injections and feeling like I called myself a science experiment cow at one point, where it's just like, can you feel any unsexier in this process? And again, like the hormones were just really messing with my mind. And so talked to doctors about HRT, and they said, obviously I'd start with a way lower dose than what I was doing for IVF.
Yeah.
But in talking with them, my symptoms weren't so bad, right? That I'm ready for HRT yet. So I am open to it. It's just not quite yet a candidate.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And it wouldn't be the first thing that I would jump to either. My own situation is that I'm 53 and I'm definitely perimenopausal in that my period is sometimes heavy and sometimes like a tiny little spot. But when I was in a sexless marriage at the end of my 40s, I started to have night sweats. I would wake up with my legs soaking wet. Hi, thanks for that. That nothing makes you feel weirder. What the fuck
Just
is
like got
wrong
one foot
with
out seeking the cold.
Oh my God, always, always. I would look at anyway. But this is like wet thighs. Like this is of no value to me on any level. And then when I started dating and having sex again, my body reversed. So I stopped having those symptoms. And so I have more oxytocin and less cortisol. And I mean, according to a menopause doctor I had on the show, Dr. Anna Kabeka, she's amazing, that it is possible to have that happen. Not that I did it with any intent, but now I'm sort of checking my watch like, okay, when's like menopause
it's like hide and go
coming?
seek, right? Yeah, some
Yeah.
of like the symptoms come in different severities. Some come none at all. Some are super strange, right? Like there's
Right.
the greatest hits, right? Like I call them the top 10 of
Yeah, let's talk
regular.
through them. Yeah.
Oh
let's
yeah.
talk through
Okay.
them.
So should I go 10 to 1 like David Letterman style?
Sure. Top 10
All
list.
right. 10, weight gain. 9, decreased libido. 8, brain
Boo.
fog.
Yeah.
7, joint and muscle aches. 6, mood changes and irritability. 5, vaginal dryness. 4, insomnia. 3, night sweats. 2, hot flashes, and 1, irregular periods. And then postmenopause, a lot of the same ones, but add in bone density loss, joint and muscle aches, and heart and health concerns as well. Yeah, good times.
They're insidious though, because beyond like hot flashes and night sweats, like you could be someone who's like me, who's always had irregular periods.
Yeah.
Or someone who's on medication for mood, or someone who's often had anxiety and trouble sleeping. It's hard to identify what brain fog is, what it really how you can diagnose it. Like a lot of this stuff is very like sort of normal feeling off.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that's where it gets tricky. You go to your doctor and you're like, oh, I'm feeling a little depressed. And the first thing they want to give you is antidepressants, right?
Yeah.
Or you're like, oh, I'm having trouble sleeping. And they're like, here's some Xanax. And it's like, whoa, let's calm down a little bit. Let's turn the
well,
volume down.
Pharma is always the go-to solution, right? Especially in this country. I don't know about you, but growing up, I never heard the word perimenopause. What is it? Like what?
Not at all. No, and I mean, it's like the same thing. I never had this conversation with my mom, right? I grew up in Miami. It was always hot. And my mom, I'm a child of immigrants. We didn't have any money growing up. So the air conditioning was really expensive, right? So she'd always be like, turn on the fan. I was like, Mommy, it's 100 degrees. And then I remember this time in life where she was just cranking the AC. And I thought, like, I go back in hindsight, like, oh, she was like having her hot flashes during that time.
Wow.
But we never talked about it, right? Like we celebrate girls coming of age when they get their period. We celebrate their puberty, like you're a woman now. But come at the end of our journey, there's no celebration. We're like have to be like hidden and not talk about it. So I'm really happy that now in our zeitgeist, in our generation, we are bringing this to the front of our conversations.
Yeah, I think women have a much more public voice these days, and certainly women in midlife, because we are the most successful generation of women who've ever lived on planet Earth in the history of humanity. We are, and we're used to being able to accomplish things and solve things and get it all done. I think we're starting to go, wait a minute. Like there's all these phenomena that we collectively go through. There's never been language for, there's never been a public conversation about. And suddenly in the last, it comes onto your radar when it comes onto your radar, right? Like if you never took a school bus, you never know it's a school bus.
Yeah.
The second you start taking a school bus, there's school buses everywhere.
Right.
So the same thing with the perimenopause and menopause conversation.
Yeah. And I mean, we have the benefit now of social media and podcasts and other ways to amplify our voices around this topic.
Yeah, for sure. Perimenopause, though, and menopause, they have a branding problem.
Yeah.
They
need
really
a
have a
rebrand.
branding problem.
They really need a rebrand.
So what I did is I went to my favorite AI search app, Perplexity, which they should sponsor the show. I'm so obsessed with this thing. It's the most.
I've never used it. I gotta check it out.
Don't ever use Google again for search. Okay. Use this thing. So
Perplexity.
I said, give me some ideas for how to rebrand the word perimenopause. Okay, I'm going to give you some options.
Give it to me. This is
Hormone
awesome.
hurricane, estrogen exodus, Midlife Metabolic Mayhem,
Whoa.
Mood Swing Symphony. Okay, I like The Spicy Years,
I like that one. That's my top so far.
Hormone Roller Coaster,
Okay.
Temperature Tango. Okay, here's some like more wooey ones.
Okay.
Wisdom Awakening, Bodily Alchemy,
Whoa.
Sovereign Transition.
Oh my goodness.
Oh
That
my
one.
God. I hate all of this. I hate
I mean,
every
I like the
single.
spicy years.
I'm
You
into
know
the
why?
spicy years.
Because like we do get a little spicy around this time. We're like in that era of, as my friend put it, like she's just giving zero fucks. Like she's just telling it like it is, and just sick of like having to pretend to be somebody else or what she thinks society needs her to be. And she's just like, you know what? Fuck it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have a different take on No Fucks Left to Give. I
Yeah.
feel like I have more fucks than ever to give. I feel more deeply. I only want to do the things I care about. I don't want to spend time people pleasing. I have all the fucks. I just want to put them in the places I want to put them, and I don't want to give them to people who don't deserve them.
I love it. Totally spicy. We're there.
Okay, The Spicy Years. That's going to
Spicy
be the
Years.
name of this episode. I love it
It's
so
fun
much.
too, since I'm Latina, I'm Cuban. My husband calls it Cuban fire when I get going, and he just all he hears is. But I had this nickname growing up, and it's Chipita, and there's no word for it in English, but it literally translates in Spanish to the little spark that sets off all the matches in the matchbook at one time.
Oh my God. I love that Spanish needed a word for that.
They're like, and then they're like, you know what? That's your nickname because you're
That
spicy.
is you. Oh my God. Well, you belong in the spicy years.
There we go.
So I'm obsessed with sex, and I love to talk about sex on this podcast. And I read in your materials that increasing your libido can help with perimenopause. Like, how does that work?
So it's, I think, more that as your estrogen is declining, one of these side effects of these symptoms, right, is low libido.
Yes.
And I think that there is this moment of like a little like extra flurry where women express that they just get extra horny.
Yes.
And it might be like this last hurrah, right? Like, oh, our body can still get pregnant. Let's go try. But then there's also just the low libido, which it's so sad, right? We are vibrant women and we should be expressed sexually.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. I think a lot of it is coming from just fatigue, right? We run households, we raise children, we have our jobs. Like we're just support systems for our children, for our elderly parents, for our friends, and everywhere in between. And so what's left for us? And so I think sleep is a big part of it, of the story that people just overlook. We might be over caffeinated during the day, and then it's a little harder to sleep at night. As someone who spent 10 years of my life telling people you should drink,
Right.
now I'm telling people like maybe you should drink only in the daytime or like taper off.
It does mess up your sleep. Alcohol.
Yeah, and you wake up around 2 a.m, processing, your liver's on overdrive, and so couple that with the insomnia that you get around that time, with the anxious, and you're like lists of things you have to do. So by the time you wake up, you're exhausted, right? So then now you drink more coffee, so you're a little more anxious. You make bad food decisions. You don't go to the gym because you're tired, and you have like little like brain fog issues because you're tired. And then you are with your partner and you don't feel like being in the mood, right? So I think sleep is just such a huge component around libido. And so just making sure that you're rested, that your tank is full.
Yeah.
And then other things, right? Like around this age, women complain of vaginal dryness. So making sure that they're using the right moisturizers or lubricants that they need, but then also finding some other ways to spice it up. So one thing that I've like turned to recently, and I'm not a porn person, so I think the visual aspect, like it's just, they get it all wrong all the time. And so I discovered an audio app. It's called Dipsy. Have you heard of this?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
I've tried them all. Yeah.
I love them. I swear by them because you get to use your imagination, right? Like where your mind goes of this voice, of this character, of this story that you're like get really into. There's another one called Quinn that I haven't really dived into as much. But I have also found when I was going through like problems with my first marriage, I discovered some tools called Gottman Institute, and they have an app called the Gottman, I think it's Love Cards. And then they have like just things to have a regular conversation, but they have the salsa deck, speaking of spicy. It's like questions that you can ask your partner to get in the mood and like get in their mind, right? So
I love
think
all of those suggestions, and those sort of audio erotica apps are so great for women because you don't get in this like I don't know, with porn, I get into like, oh my God, does she really want to be there? Like, is she trying to pay
Yeah.
her rent? Like, does she think this is a long-term solution for her life? Like, I get worried about her. Like, she's going to go try to be a receptionist, and then some asshole's going to be like, I saw you on OnlyFans. Like, I get worried about the girls. And then I don't want to compare my body, and it's all
There's a lot of that.
performance. And
Yeah.
so it's so imaginative, the audio stuff. And also sometimes the guys' voices, if it's a guy's voice, they're so hot. It's
I
like,
know.
my
And I mean, that's
God.
what's so beautiful is they get to be whoever you want them to be in your brain, right? They look like whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's just that's the voice that you're matching to this visual.
Yeah, for
And then
sure.
yeah, they also have a lot of like self-pleasuring apps and tools as well on those where they walk you through different positions to masturbate in. And
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
it's,
Underrated.
yeah.
Underrated. I love that. I love that. And we did an episode with Dr. Maureen Slattery, who talks a lot about low libido and sort of remedies for that. So if listeners want to go back and listen to that in the archive, that is there for you. And also, I think a lot of our friends probably need to hear this conversation. So if you're listening and you're like, oh gosh, maybe it's perimenopause that Amy is going through or Louisa's going through. It's like, I might share this one with her because I think not only is this an important sort of resource for people, it's what you have on the website is also really cool and like great product bundles and all kinds of things. We have a discount code for listeners at the end of the episode. But yeah, so sleep is critical. We talk to our friends, we talk to our moms, we talk to our aunts, we talk to the women that we're close to in our lives, maybe our doctors. But how do you explain to your partner, especially if you have a male partner, like what this is?
Yeah. So I'll just speak from personal experience, right? I'm 47. My husband is 43. And when I was parking these things of, oh, he's having his midlife crisis, and I started to hear myself, and it gave me the same like burn as when he would say, oh, it's just your time of the month, right?
The
And so
worst.
it was just like, exactly. And so I was thinking like, okay, let me take a step back. Like, what's really going on? And come to find out through research that he's in something called andropause. And so andropause is really similar to menopause. It's a decline in sex hormones, whereas women, it's estrogen. For men, it's testosterone.
Right.
And so as their testosterone decreases, they have some similar issues that we do, right? So like hair loss, there's some weight gain, there's bone loss, night sweats, mood swings, depression,
Wait,
insomnia.
what?
I know. I was like, wow. I mean, they have other things that come along with it. Like there might be some mild to moderate erectile dysfunction. There might be some decreased motivation and focus issues as well. So a lot of it just kept like, oh my God, we're in the same boat. And so when I was coming at it from that lens, I had this like compassion and sympathy and also maybe like a shared vocabulary. And so I said, hey, are you noticing this for yourself? Or I've heard, just like position it very sweetly, like, oh, my friend was telling me that he's in a men's group and they're taking testosterone supplements. Have you heard of this?
Careful.
Or
We don't need them. We don't need them more aggressive
a
than
little
they
too
are.
much, right? But it was just really curious to me of like, oh my gosh, not only am I living in a house where my daughters are approaching puberty and showing signs of their hormones? Now I've got my husband as well as me. So we're just in a hormone household right now. So I think coming at it from a place of compassion and sympathy, shared understanding, even shared vocabulary about what's going on, I think is a good start.
Hormone hurricane.
Ah,
Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. I mean, I'm 53. My daughter, I have twins, and my kids are almost 14. So my daughter is just like full on all the things that happen when in the early days of your period, and probably even into my 40s. I had all this stuff. But it is so amazing that like we are all going through this stuff. And I think with men, like there is not a public conversation about that. There's conversations in the sort of manosphere, in the broverse around low T. He's
yeah.
low T, you know.
Or they put it around like longevity or just more trending topics versus just calling it what it is,
Right.
right?
It's like
Like,
we're
yeah,
aging, like our
yeah.
bodies are changing. And we're at midlife when given our potential to live 80 to 80, 90, 100 these days. We're smack in the middle. And it benefits everyone to just be
Yeah.
straight about like, yeah, this feels weird. This is changing. Like I don't feel like I felt when I was 24. We're willing to say that finally. you
Yeah.
know.
And I mean, like to our daughters, right? Like
Yep.
we have the talks, we tell them about puberty way before they need to know, and
Right.
we celebrate it and we talk about it. We have books and conversations.
Yep.
But it's like, I remember my daughter at one point, she was just crying. And I was like, what's wrong? She's like, I don't know why I'm crying. I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I know this.
Oh my
Like
God.
that we can absolutely connect on this one. And
Well,
so
they have
it really opened it
apps.
up.
They have
Yeah.
apps too. They have period tracker apps that they use. So
Yeah.
I
It's
was
like
always like
Clue and Flow.
blindsided by why I was crying. And then I'd
Yeah.
be like, the next morning I'd have my period. And I
Like,
was like,
oh,
oh,
that's
every
why.
time.
It's like every month it's the same, but it's like, I don't know why I'm crying. Yeah. And I have these books for her. I'd asked like our therapist about what is good for teens now. And she said, "Those American Girl dolls." And I said, yes. She's like, well, they have a book series, and the book series is fantastic. And it's like all about you. And this Normal is another book, and the Feelings book is another. And then they have a guy version called like Guy Stuff and Guy Stuff Feelings.
Hmm.
And they're written almost like in that Cosmo style of like Q&A, like Bloody in Boise or whatever
Oh
it
my
is.
God.
But they're just like, it's really sweet when it's coming from someone else and it's written with like good illustrations and whatnot. I thought, like, this is fantastic. And so
Yeah.
we just, Tuesdays we go through that
Oh my
together.
God. I would give those kinds of books to my kids and then they would hide them
Ah,
and not ever want to talk about it. I'm like, I'm the most open person in the world. I'm like, I don't know if everyone's a reaction to their
yeah.
parents, right? Like,
Oh, mine was the opposite. I remember when I got my period, and I lied about it because my friends had gotten it, and I was 14 and still hadn't gotten it. So I was such a late bloomer that they're like, "Have you gotten it?" I was like, "Oh yeah." And meanwhile, I was like, hadn't. And then I remember I finally got it, and I was so excited. And I ran to my mom's room, and she was taking a shower. I was like, "Mommy, I got my period," and she was almost like pissed, like, "Oh, I gotta stop my shower." And she like got out, like wrapped a towel around herself, and she like hands me a tampon from her drawer. And I was like, what do I do with this? And she just turned around and grabbed the box and pointed to the instructions and then walked away. And I was like, are you serious right now? Like, this is our talk.
oh, that is so funny. That is so funny.
So yeah, I'm like almost like the opposite now, where I'm over communicating to like undo.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It's like, it's a line to walk around all that stuff with my daughter and my son. It's like, and they're
And
such,
you have them at the same age, right? Like twins. So
it's
you have
wild.
like two versions of the same like puberty.
It's wild. It's wild in my house. Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting. It's so parallel, right? Like it's just amazing to be a woman. It's amazing to be a woman and to have the privilege of having this sort of evolution of our bodies and of our minds. And I do, because I talk to so many women in midlife, the opportunity that happens when you're not having this hormone hurricane, hormone roller coaster, whatever the app told me to call it, is a different kind of headspace for us. It's a more level headspace. It's a less cyclical headspace. It's a more even headspace. Like, and it's not surprising to me that all the stats are saying like women who are on boards, companies with women on the board, which are usually older women, do better. Companies with older women CEOs do better. Like, because we have all of the sort of life experience of having been a woman and all that empathy, but then we aren't subject to the ups and downs of our cycle at this point in our life. And I think seeing it as an opportunity, once you're sort of through the symptomatic woods, it really is an incredible time of life. So many women starting businesses, so many women reinventing.
Yeah, yeah, it's like this age of reinvention, of this self-exploration. What is your identity? What do you want it to be? And just feeling like if my body can change, my mind can change, right? I can start something new. I can reinvent myself. I can take on this new hobby or this new interest or this new business even, right? So,
Right,
yeah.
right. This new relationship, this new way
Yeah.
of doing life.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly started this podcast because I have all those questions for myself, and I felt like I can't be the only one. I can't be the only
That's
one.
like one of the biggest messages I have for women through this process is just that you're not alone, right? Like, I think we have these feelings of like, oh, nobody gets it, nobody understands. It's the same like the teenagers, right? They're like, no, you don't get it, you'll
Right.
never understand. And meanwhile, it's like, yeah, we are like this amazing population. I think we're at 1 billion women in menopause around the world. And in this era of life, perimenopause and menopause, and we collectively, we're so strong and vibrant, and there's just so much ahead of us because we have that wisdom of everything that we've collected through our lives.
I love that. I love a positive, empowering message because this time of life can also be hard and confusing, and the economy is changing, and the careers that we thought we were building have suddenly disappeared for a lot of us. And the relationships that we were in have ended because we no longer need that structure to raise our children. And we look up and go, what am I doing this for?
That was my first pancake. I think I called my first marriage my first pancake because it was like when you cook pancakes, the first one's always a little shitty. So it was just sort of like, and then so it took a while there to reinvent, like, okay, well, who am I without this person? And who am I without these relationships and friendships that we cultivated together that no longer serve me? Who do I want to be? Who do I get to be now?
Right.
Yeah.
And then who am I with children, and who am I once my children have launched if I did a good job? So, yeah, I think it's so interesting. I mean, I'm just eternally fascinated by the journey that women go through and the way that we figure out how to be so resourceful and be in community with each other. Because I think we're living in a culture that is increasingly isolated and isolating. And so that's part of what I love about what you're doing is like, let's all have this conversation together. So talk to me about like some of the goodies that people can find on your site.
Yeah, so I have them grouped by symptoms and sort of just going by those kind of top 10. But then I also have these fun bundles. So the products say, like, for example, in hot flashes and night sweats. So everything you need to outfit your home and your body through hot flashes and night sweats. So if you think about where you sleep, it's your bedding. So we have cooling performance sheets that have Zerotech. It's a moisture wicking technology. We have the same temperature regulating pillowcases. I have a variety of sleepwear in different fabrics and styles to help, through a night sweat, cooling blankets. And then, during the day, everything from cooling bracelets and necklaces. I'm wearing one now. You put this bracelet
can
in
we
the
see
freezer. It? Yeah, I don't know if I'm holding it up.
Oh my God,
here.
that's amazing. It's pretty.
Thanks. Yeah, so it's from a company called Hot Girls Pearls, and it's called the Chiclet Cooling Bracelet. They come in a variety of colors, but basically you put them in the freezer, and then you put them on, and it just helps cool you down at your pulse points. So we have tank tops, finishing sprays for your makeup, so when you're going through the hot sweat, the sweating
doesn't slide off face.
Exactly. Yeah. And then everything in vaginal dryness and low libido. We've got moisturizers, lubricants, vibrators, and toys as well. Insomnia and fatigue, same thing, including eye masks. We have hair and skin products. We've got a bookstore and a gift shop, so it has some cards. And then, as I mentioned, the bundles are really fun. So I have like one that's called Welcome to the Club. And it has a couple books, it has a gift card, and a perimenopause WTF card. There's a Spice Things Up collection. There's a Sleep Essentials, Skin and Glow. So it's just a few different groups there. And then we have a big resource directory under our Learn section, where we've got a lot of articles about everything from diet, HRT, bone loss, acupuncture, and so much more.
So great. So great. And what a smart idea for a business. I mean, really just to put it all in one place so that people who are suffering with all the various delightful and insulting parts of their menopause.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to cover everything with the exception of hormone replacement therapy, as I'm not a medical professional. And obviously consult your doctor before taking on any changes in your health. But for the most part, everything else, right? Like some people, maybe they're taking HRT and need something to help supplement, or maybe they're not ready for it yet. Maybe they're buying it for a friend or a loved one. So I think that there's a huge market for women.
Sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And for Hotter Than Ever listeners, you can get a 10% discount if you go to the Hotter Just Me website. The link is in the show notes. And put in the code HOTTER. It'll be easy to remember. And you get a 10% discount on whatever you get there on your first purchase. So thank you so much for that, Carin. I think that our listeners will appreciate that.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's anything I can do to be in service of our sisterhood.
Yes, thank you. So is there any one thing that you would leave the Hotter Than Ever listeners with about this period of life, about what's possible for them in perimenopause, about what's going to make it easier?
Yeah, I think that the biggest takeaway is just that you are not alone. I think that We are natural community makers as women. We lean on each other for girlfriend medicine, girlfriend advice, girlfriend support, and just to know that you're not alone. There's so many resources out there. And when you start to question, is this normal? Is it hot or is it just me?
Yeah.
Just to start poking around in it and go beyond trying to say like this is an isolated thing and take a step back and say this might be perimenopause. It might be the time for this amazing journey of transformation in my life.
Right. The spicy years.
The spicy years. You know what it reminds me of? Do you remember that show, The Wonder Years?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Where all the characters are in bed. What was her name? Winnie. Where Winnie is in perimenopause.
Let's get her on the show.
Oh my God. Amazing. Amazing. Carin, thank you so much.
Oh, it was so fun, Erin. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Hotter Than Ever. I hope you enjoyed this conversation about perimenopause and puberty and all the symptoms and solutions that come along with this period of life. Or this, do I still get my period of life? Is there someone in your life who needs to hear this conversation, who may have some of these symptoms, who may be looking for solutions and community and products and conversations that will help ameliorate this transition for them? Please share this episode with them. I love it when you share Hotter Than Ever with the people in your life. That is how we grow. That is how we keep the show going. And I am grateful for you. Also, visit the Hot or Just Me link in the show notes and use the code HOTTER for a 10% discount off of the awesome products Carin has on her site. Lots of great bundles and gifts for the women in your life who may be needing a little extra help to get through this crazy hormonal and life transition. Hotter Than Ever is produced by Erica Gerard and Podkit Productions. Our associate producer is Melody Carey. Music is by Chris Keating, with vocals by Isa Fernandez. I'm always too hot or too cold. My fingers are always freezing. My toes are always freezing. What about you? I don't know what month it is or how it's supposed to be temperature-wise anymore. Is it supposed to be hot in February? Is it supposed to be cold? Is it cold? Is it hot? Is it climate change or is it perimenopause? I guess we will never know.